Long before satellites, GPS, and modern navigation systems, the ocean was the greatest unknown on Earth. For centuries, sailors crossed vast stretches of water, guided only by the stars above them. The sea was both a path to discovery and a place where countless ships vanished without explanation. Even today, the ocean remains one of the least explored places on our planet. More than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and much of it is still mysterious. Far from land, where the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction, the ocean becomes a completely different world. A place where silence dominates, a place where storms can appear without warning, a place where even the strongest ships can suddenly find themselves in danger. For those who spend their lives at sea, there is an unspoken rule. You must always respect the ocean, because the ocean does not forgive mistakes. A single mechanical failure, a sudden storm, or a moment of panic can quickly turn an ordinary voyage into a desperate fight for survival. Throughout history, the sea has produced countless stories of courage and tragedy. Ships lost in violent storms, sailors stranded on drifting vessels, and sometimes ships discovered floating silently across the ocean with no crew on board. These are the kinds of stories that have fascinated people for generations, because when a ship is found abandoned in the middle of the ocean, one question always comes to mind. What happened to the people who were on board? The vast Pacific Ocean has witnessed many strange events. Ships that disappeared without leaving a single trace, radio signals that suddenly went silent, and vessels that were later discovered drifting alone across thousands of kilometers of open water. Among these maritime mysteries, one case stands out as particularly unsettling. A ship that departed on a short journey, a crew of 25 people, and a voyage that should have lasted only 2 days. But what began as a routine trip across the Pacific soon turned into one of the most disturbing maritime mysteries ever recorded, because weeks later, the ship would be found again, still floating, still intact, but completely empty. No crew, no passengers, no explanation. The name of that ship was the MV Joyita, a vessel that, on the surface, seemed perfectly ordinary. It carried cargo between islands, transported passengers across the Pacific, and had successfully completed many voyages before. But one journey in 1955 would transform the ship into a legend of maritime mystery. A story that investigators, historians, and sailors have tried to understand for decades. Because when the MV Joyita finally reappeared drifting across the Pacific Ocean, what investigators discovered on board raised more questions than answers. The ship had not sunk. It had not been destroyed. It had simply been abandoned. And the 25 people who had once stood on its deck had vanished without leaving any clear trace behind. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened during those missing weeks at sea. Some believe the crew may have panicked after a mechanical failure. Others suspect an accident or a series of unfortunate events. And some believe the truth may be something far stranger. Because out there, far from land, the ocean can hide secrets in ways that few places on Earth can. Ships can drift for thousands of kilometers, storms can erase evidence, and small boats can disappear forever without leaving a single sign behind. But what makes the story of the MV Joyita so chilling is not just that the ship was found abandoned. It is the condition in which it was discovered. Food was still on board. Cargo remained untouched. Personal belongings were left behind. It looked as if the crew had left suddenly, as if something had forced them to abandon the ship in a hurry. Yet the vessel itself was still floating, still capable of staying on the surface. and still drifting quietly across the Pacific Ocean. In the end, the story of the MV Joyita became one of the greatest unsolved maritime mysteries ever recorded. A ship, 25 people, and a disappearance that the ocean has never fully explained. Because sometimes the sea does not return answers. Sometimes it only leaves behind questions. Imagine sailing through the vast Pacific Ocean and suddenly spotting a ship drifting in the distance. At first, nothing seems unusual. Ships cross the ocean every day, but as you get closer, something feels wrong. The vessel moves slowly with the waves. No radio signals, no crew on deck, no lights, just a silent ship drifting across the water. When investigators finally boarded the vessel, they discovered something disturbing. The ship was completely abandoned, but everything inside suggested the crew had left in a hurry. This is the strange mystery of the MV Joyita. In 1955, the cargo vessel MV Joyita departed from the harbor of Apia in Samoa. Its destination was the small island group of Tokelau. The trip was supposed to take just 2 days. On board were 25 people, sailors, passengers, and the ship's captain. For many of them, it was just another routine journey across the Pacific. The weather was calm. The ocean was quiet. Nothing suggested that anything unusual was about to happen. But after the ship left the harbor, it never arrived at its destination. At first, no one was too worried. Ships sometimes arrived late due to weather or navigation issues. But as days passed with no sign of the vessel, concern began to grow. Soon, the ship was officially declared missing. A large search operation began across the Pacific Ocean. Planes scanned the water, ships searched the shipping routes. But for weeks, there was nothing. No wreckage, no distress signal, no lifeboats. The MV Joyita had simply vanished. Then, more than 5 weeks later, something unexpected happened. A search aircraft flying over the Pacific spotted a strange object drifting in the water. As the plane approached, the crew realized what they were looking at. It was the missing ship, the MV Joyita, still floating. But something about the scene was deeply unsettling. The ship was tilted to one side, partially flooded, but clearly still afloat. Rescue teams quickly arrived and boarded the vessel, and what they found raised more questions than answers. The first thing they noticed, there was no one on board. All 25 people had disappeared. The ship looked abandoned, but not destroyed. Even stranger, many things were still inside. Food supplies were untouched. Cargo was still stored in the ship. Personal belongings remained in cabins. It looked as if the crew had suddenly left the vessel. But why? Investigators quickly noticed several strange details. The ship's radio was set to the wrong emergency frequency, meaning that any distress signal might never have been heard. There were also signs that someone had been injured. Medical supplies were scattered around the ship. Blood-stained bandages were discovered on deck, but no body was ever found. Another disturbing detail involved the ship itself. The MV Joyita had been built with special flotation compartments made of cork. This meant the ship was almost impossible to sink. Even if the hull was damaged and flooded with water, the vessel would still remain afloat, so abandoning the ship would make very little sense. The safest place for the crew should have been on the ship itself. Yet somehow, every single person had vanished. Over the years, investigators proposed several theories. One possibility was mechanical failure. If the ship began taking on water, the crew might have believed it was sinking. In panic, they could have abandoned the vessel using lifeboats. But if that happened, where did the lifeboats go? None were ever found. Another theory suggested piracy. The Pacific Ocean has seen its share of criminal activity. Perhaps pirates attacked the vessel, but there was no evidence of violence, no bullet holes, no clear signs of a struggle, and most of the cargo was still there. Some even suggested the crew might have attempted to reach land using a lifeboat. If they believed the ship was sinking, they might have left together. But the ocean currents in that region are powerful and unpredictable. A small lifeboat could easily disappear without leaving any trace. Despite years of investigation, the mystery remains unsolved. No confirmed evidence ever revealed what truly happened to the MV Joyita. No survivors were ever found, no wreckage from lifeboats, no clear explanation. Just an abandoned ship drifting silently across the Pacific Ocean. The ocean has always been full of mysteries. Ships vanish, signals disappear, and sometimes entire crews are lost without explanation. Out there, beyond the horizon, the sea keeps its secrets well. And the strange story of the MV Joyita remains one of the most chilling maritime mysteries ever recorded. Because somewhere in the vast Pacific Ocean, 25 people disappeared, and no one ever discovered why. #Description. In 1955, a cargo ship departed from Samoa with 25 people on board. The journey should have taken only 2 days, but the ship never arrived. 5 weeks later, the vessel was discovered drifting in the Pacific Ocean, completely abandoned. No crew, no lifeboats, no explanation. This is the mysterious story of the MV Joyita, one of the strangest maritime mysteries ever recorded.